Heck it, we haven't had enough potato quality on this channel yet. This is perfect. In the hot summer of 1991, Ayrton Senna led Nigel Mansell by just 8 points coming towards the Hungaroring, although he looked set to increase that margin after an untouchable qualifying lap. Look at that, 1.2 seconds ahead of the Williamses of Patrese and Mansell. That's quite something even for Senna. Aside from that, the grid was pretty straightforward, with the first 3 rows of the grid locked out by McLarens, Williamses and Ferraris, with Emanuele Pirro's Dallara best of the rest in 7th. The most notable failure to qualify was Michele Alboreto, who was still trying to struggle on in the twilight of his career. I would mention everyone who failed to qualify, but I would just be listing names, as this was back in the day with humongous entry lists, including pre-qualifying and qualifying knockouts, so 8 drivers failed to make it, including whole teams. Patrese had never been known for his starts, but when the race began, he stuck his car alongside Senna and challenged into turn 1. Despite this, he wasn't feisty enough to take the lead. The 2 Williamses followed through and the rest of the pack were clean. Senna obviously felt very confident about this race, and McLaren had apparently brought a new lightweight package to the Grand Prix to help him. In the early stages of the race, nothing much happened. This was to be expected, of course. Back in those days, the races were longer and the cars were more physical to drive, so it was often about biding your time and waiting to capitalise on mistakes. I actually did a season of sim racing in a 1991 F1 car once, and I crashed at almost every round. It really is extremely difficult, as easy as drivers like Senna make it look. The first spinner of the race was Aguri Suzuki in the Lola, who had started 22nd on the grid. He was able to spin-turn the car without featuring on our crunch count, although it was clear he'd need attrition to get anything meaningful out of the race. Another driver having the same spin was Emanuele Pirro. This meant Capelli was 7th and Brundle was 8th. Now that's what I call a pirouette.
Don't leave me out, guys. He looks like fun. Whee!
And Mark Blundell goes around. My goodness, at this rate I'm gonna have to create a brand new count for the number of drivers rotating. Get it going cleanly, Mark. Ooh, that's close with the Lambo, goodness me. Here we get a glimpse of Mika Hakkinen in the Lotus. A lot of people forget that Mika started his career in a Lotus, or indeed that Lotus was still in F1 in 91. They certainly struggled, and Mika's teammate Michael Bartels actually failed to qualify. After Senna, Patrese, Mansell and Prost had followed each other for a good number of laps, the first major change came when Prost blew his engine and headed into the pits. Prost was racing under a suspended ban after an incident at the German Grand Prix, ridiculously unfairly in my opinion, but it wasn't that which troubled him this time. He was the first retirement. One of the first front runners to stop was best of the rest Martin Brundle, who rejoined right into a gaggle of cars. Look how close this got. Watch the Ligier as it has to get off the line to avoid him, allowing Moreno up the inside. Then into turn 2, Moreno goes for a move on Brundle and locks up, and almost plows into the back of Brundle. What a skirmish. Back to the front of the pack, Senna was pulling away steadily, but the Williamses of Patrese and Mansell were still hot on his heels. It's interesting to see Patrese right up there, as just a year later while fighting for the title he would be nowhere near his teammate through most of the races. He was driving quickly but steadily, which is more than can be said for this pixelated pirouette. I can't tell you who it is, but I can tell you that the West Indies are 13 runs ahead of England in the first inning. Interesting. Now watch this, it's about to get very close in the braking! Goodness me, Nigel Mansell got caught out by Eric Comas and almost ran into the back of him, goodness! Insert excellent Chris Whitfield impression of an irate Brummie here. On lap 39, both of the unreliable Lolas blew their Ford engines. There wasn't a single race in 1991 where both Lolas finished, and from the next race on, only one would qualify for each race at best. If only they could afford a better engine. Also out of the race at a similar point were Pirro and Piquet. Anyway, it was a time for a change of tactics for the Williams team. Patrese had been unable to attack Senna for 40 laps, so with 37 laps left in the race, it was time for Mansell to have a go. The tension was beginning to build as the championship leaders looked set to go head to head. Take a look at that Jordan they're about to lap there. That's Bertrand Gachot running around 12th position, and interestingly this would be Gachot's last race for a few months, as he was soon to be found guilty of assault and sentenced to prison in London. His seat would be filled by a young sports car ace known as Michael Schumacher, and the rest is of course history. Meanwhile, Mansell was really beginning to pressure Senna, and his first opportunity was on this lap here. This, of course, is the track where Nigel had passed Senna with a thrilling, opportunistic move just 2 years before. Next, JJ Leto DNF'd for the 7th time in 10 races. It must have been infuriating to be an F1 driver in the early 90s, especially in an unreliable car. Some might wonder why they got out of bed in the morning. Now, here's a strange retirement. Martin Brundle pulled out of the race for reasons Wikipedia lists as physical. It seems the car was healthy, but maybe the race was just too difficult for poor Martin. He'd been running decently well too, so this was an unfortunate DNF. And to add to the list of retirements, Mark Blundell's tyre blew on the other Brabham, and Pierluigi Martini's engine did what Minardi's do best. 9 down, 17 to go.
Steady on, chaps, for where you squirt those fire extinguishers, they make an awful mess of the engine.
I'm not sure there's much to save there, Murray, I'm afraid. A year before this race, in 1990, Thierry Boutsen had beaten Senna to win the Hungarian Grand Prix. Today, he was once again ahead of Senna, but about to be lapped for the 2nd time and smoking badly. He eventually became the last retirement of the race, leaving 16 cars to see the checkered flag.
And it was Thierry Boutsen who made that classic remark in Germany after criticism that every Grand Prix driver who complains ought to be made to drive a Ligier, because then he would discover what, in Boutsen's view, is a truly awful motor car.
You wait till you drive the 93 Jordan, mate. Fastest lap Bertrand Gachot, wow, if only he was that quick all the time. At the end of the race, Senna broke clear of Mansell and came home to win by 4.6 seconds. The Williams cars were 2nd and 3rd, but Berger's 4th place allowed McLaren to retake the lead of the Constructors' Championship, which they would go on to win. The other points-paying positions went to Jean Alesi and Ivan Capelli, and Senna lapped everyone up to and including 6th place. Guys, before I give this race a score, I want to let you know that I have a Daily Motion account for all the races that get taken down from my YouTube channel by the pesky FOM bots. Due to the high levels of parody, review and education my videos contain, as well as the short lengths of the clips I use, I believe that all of my videos fall under fair use, but sadly this isn't always enough. On my Daily Motion account, you can find the 1996 Monaco and Portuguese Grand Prix, as well as any other video that may end up being taken down from my YouTube channel. The link is in the description. Thank you. I gave the Grand Prix a 3.7 out of 10 overall, as sadly it was quite straightforward. That's okay though. It's my opinion that Formula 1 is never dull, even when the finishing order is predictable and there's not many overtakes. It just goes to show that the 1990s weren't quite as great as everyone remembers them with their rose-tinted memories. It is slightly redeemed by the championship fight between Williams and McLaren, and I've given it a bonus point for the tension built when the Williamses were stuck behind Senna. Interestingly, the crunch count for this race was 0, at least as far as I saw. I'll give the Driver of the Day award for Best Driver to Eric Kermas, who made up 15 positions to finish 10th in the woeful Ligier. That would have given him a point in the modern day. I'll give the Annoy Trophy for Worst Driver to Mauricio Gugelmin for finishing behind Kermas in a Leighton house that was capable of points. Thank you for watching, drive safe guys, and I'll see you next time.